chosen one. Before we begin, I want to take a sacred moment to thank every single one of you who has supported this message through a super thanks. Your generosity isn't just a donation, it's a seed. A spiritual agreement that you're walking this path with us, helping this truth reach others who are still in the dark, still wondering why they survived. And to those of you who support just by watching, listening, praying, commenting, or even sitting silently and feeling every word, I'm just as grateful for you, whether you gave or not. Your presence here means everything, because this message, right now, is confirmation that your life has never been random. You didn't stumble across this video. It was assigned to find you. Heaven whispered, and your spirit responded. You've probably felt it for a long time, like you were walking through life with a secret only the sky could understand. You knew things you couldn't explain. You sensed danger before it appeared. You were pulled out of places you had no business surviving. Some of you were in car crashes that left others broken, but you walked away. Some of you fought illness that baffled doctors, but somehow healed. Some of you were in abusive homes, vatsoness, even suicidal silence, but something, someone, some force held you. Can you feel that moment again? The second when time paused and fate leaned in and made a different decision. That wasn't chance. That was divine interruption. That was the mark of the chosen. Let me ask you something deeper. Have you ever felt like your life didn't belong to you alone? Like everything you've suffered had a meaning that still hasn't revealed itself yet? Like every setback was secretly aligning you with something greater? That's not delusion. That's design. There's a reason your prayers hit different. There's a reason people either cling to you or turn against you. There's a reason you can sense lies, feel shifts in a room, dream of things before they happen, because you're not just living, you're carrying an assignment, one that requires supernatural shielding. That's why death couldn't touch you. That's why the attacks didn't succeed. You were protected, even when you didn't know you were being watched over. The enemy saw what you would become before you did. That's why it tried to silence you early. That's why it sent betrayal, delay, depression, and destruction to your door. But it underestimated something. It underestimated the God in you. It didn't count on the fire in your bones, the prayers of your ancestors, or the hand of heaven holding your life back from the edge. It didn't know that your silence was strategy, that your pain was prophecy, and that your delay was divine. You were held back on purpose, so that when the time came, this time you would rise, like the one who was preserved for a purpose. So if you're hearing this now, it's because heaven said, go ahead. They're ready. You've reached the intersection where revelation meets remembrance. And this message is not just words, it's an activation. Something inside you is already waking up. You feel it in your chest, in your spirit, in your bones. You're starting to remember. You've always known you were different. But now it's time to understand why. You didn't survive just to exist. You survived to fulfill. And this right here, this is the beginning of that fulfillment. Now take a breath, because we're about to unlock the truth about what's been chasing you, protecting you, and calling your name since before you were even born. Thank you again for being here, for staying through this moment, for sharing this with someone who needs it. Let's begin. God's chosen ones. Only 1 inch, a million carry this mark on their left hand, do you? Chosen one. Have you ever truly paused to ask yourself why you're still here? Not just physically breathing, but spiritually intact, mentally standing, and emotionally functional after everything you've endured. Do you realize how many moments were supposed to break you, bury you, or leave you hollow and defeated? Yet somehow, you're still here, stronger, wiser, more aware. That survival wasn't merely because of your resilience. It wasn't just your willpower. It was something greater. You were covered, guarded, shielded, watched over. This wasn't luck. It was divine protection. And it's been following you since the beginning. Divine protection isn't a stroke of fortune or a reward for perfection. It's not something you earned by being the smartest in the room or the most put together among your peers. Why do you think certain people who looked better off didn't make it, but you did? It's because something far beyond human comprehension placed its hand on your life and whispered, "Not yet." God himself drew a boundary line around your soul and said, "This one has purpose." You weren't allowed to die in that moment because your assignment wasn't finished. Your exit had not been authorized. Have you ever thought about how many silent battles were fought on your behalf while you slept? How many unseen angels rerouted destruction that was heading straight toward you? Look back. Reflect on your past, not just the highlights, but the dark alleys, the near-fatal moments, the impossible turns. Chosen ones are often born into conditions that look like chaos from the start. Many of you were raised in households with instability, neglect, addiction, or absence. Some of you faced violence, illness, or trauma before you could even speak. Why is that? Why does it seem like chosen ones are forged in the fire so early on? Could it be because the enemy always tries to destroy greatness while it's still vulnerable? Yet even in that chaos, wasn't there always something, some shift, some interruption that stopped the worst from happening? That wasn't luck. That was divine interference. The Bible says in Psalm 91:11, "For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways." That's not just poetic, it's a promise. When your life is marked with a heavenly assignment, divine protection becomes a built-in shield. It's the covering God places over those whose existence threatens darkness, awakens light, and carries breakthrough for others. That's you. That's why you were watched from the moment you entered this realm. Before you even knew who you were, heaven already knew your name. Let's take real-world examples. Oprah Winfrey was born into poverty and endured unspeakable trauma in her youth. Yet something in her kept rising. Coincidence? No. It was protection for a voice the world would one day need. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison and still emerged, not just alive, but a liberator of nations. Again, protection. Why do you think people like Malala Yousafzai survived a targeted shooting to become a global advocate for education? Or why did Tyler Perry rise from homelessness to build a media empire that now inspires millions? Why did Bethany Hamilton, who lost her arm in a shark attack, return to professional surfing and become a symbol of courage? These are not ordinary survival stories. They're divine assignments, shielded by divine force. And death, it circled you more times than you know. It watched you when you were reckless, numb, or too tired to fight. There were car accidents that didn't happen, overdoses you walked away from, operations that didn't fail. Some of you faced suicide and still woke up the next day. Why? Because the spiritual realm had already blocked the exit. The book of Isaiah 54:17 says, "No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper." Do you believe that now? Not because you did everything right, but because you weren't done. You still have names to call into awakening. People are waiting on your voice, your presence, your fire. Some doors will never open until you show up. What about those strange delays? The train you missed, the call you didn't answer, the flat tire that made you late. Have you ever realized those weren't mishaps, but protection codes, divine security, rerouting your path because you were walking into danger unaware? How many times have you felt an inner nudge not to go somewhere, and later found out chaos had broken out at that exact place and time? That wasn't paranoia. That was spiritual radar. That was Proverbs 3, 6-inch action. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. God has been steering you in ways you didn't understand at the time. Chosen one. The reason you've been spared is not because you're invincible, but because your mission is still unfolding. Do you ever wonder what would have happened to the people around you if you hadn't made it through? There are people who gained hope just watching you survive. Some whose lives were altered just from a conversation with you. You may not realize it yet, but you've been a walking activation point. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Do you feel the weight of that now? You weren't a random birth. You were a divine strategy. Let's return to your own story. How many should-have-been dead moments have you walked away from? Think about Princess Diana's near-death encounters before her final tragedy, or Justin Bieber's confession that he believes angels saved him during some of his darkest years. Or look at Viola Davis, who survived extreme poverty and abuse and went on to become an icon of perseverance. Their survival wasn't just for them, neither is yours. Even now, your life is being steered. You're not out here unguarded. You're not moving without backup. The mark on your life, the one so few carry, is real. And many won't understand why you're still standing, but you weren't meant for ordinary. You carry something holy, something heavy, something heaven ordained. So now, ask yourself, what am I still alive for? Who still needs my story, my voice, my healing? What battles are left that only I can win? You don't need to know all the answers yet, but one thing is certain: you didn't make it this far alone. Divine protection kept you alive, because divine purpose needs you awake. And chosen one, you are finally waking up. Romans 8:28 confirms it. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. Aude, and now, your purpose is calling louder than ever. Are you ready to answer? Chosen one, let this truth settle into your spirit. The reason you keep escaping death isn't because death overlooked you. No, death saw you, it marked you, it targeted you more than once. But every time it came near, it was stopped, outranked by a higher order, silenced by divine authority. Why? Because your presence on this earth is not the result of chance. You are not alive by coincidence. You are alive because heaven made an investment in you, and heaven protects what it invests in. When God breathes destiny into a soul, no force of darkness, no premature ending, no unseen danger can override that divine contract. Have you ever stopped to consider how many fatal moments almost happened but didn't? Car accidents that barely missed, illnesses that didn't escalate, wrong turns that didn't end in disaster. Why do you think that is? Why do you think you were spared when others weren't? Not because you were more righteous or more deserving, but because heaven placed an invisible barrier between you and destruction, even in your loneliest, lowest hours when you felt forsaken, unseen, or like you had nothing left to offer. There was still something sacred standing between you and total collapse. What was that force? It was divine protection. Psalm 34:7 says, The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and he delivers them. Chosen one. That's not a metaphor. That's been your reality. There were nights you cried yourself to sleep, thinking no one was coming to save you. But unseen warriors were standing guard. You may have felt broken, but you were never fully crushed. You may have felt shattered, but not beyond repair. That's because your story wasn't finished. Your impact wasn't complete. The world had not yet seen the fullness of what you carry. And here's something deeper that few dare to admit. Divine protection doesn't always feel gentle. Sometimes it comes wrapped in pain. It arrives through delays, through rejections, through people walking away. Have you ever been left out and later realized that exclusion saved you? Have you ever been frustrated by a setback, only to learn that it redirected you away from danger? That wasn't punishment. That was heaven, rearranging your steps. That was Proverbs 16, 9-inch action. In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. Let's look at the lives of those who also bore the mark of divine interruption. Martin Luther King Jr. was under constant threat, yet was preserved long enough to shift the course of civil rights history. Harriet Tubman navigated slave catchers, death traps, and betrayal, and still led over 70 people to freedom. Actor Robert Downey Jr. nearly lost everything to addiction, but something pulled him back to become one of Hollywood's most redeemed figures. Then there's Viola Davis, who turned a childhood of hunger and trauma into a platform for healing through the arts. And consider Louis Zamperini, an Olympic athlete turned WWE soldier who survived a plane crash, 47 days lost at sea, and brutal Japanese POW camps. He later forgave his captors and became a speaker of hope. These are not stories of chance. These are patterns of divine interference, painful, powerful, and precise. And what about you? What if the betrayal you endured wasn't a curse, but a barrier that protected you from deeper entanglement? What if the job you lost was the exact door that had to close so your real purpose could be unlocked? Can you now see that rejection was often redirection? Can you feel that delay was divine pause for proper alignment? Isaiah 43:2 gives this promise. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. That's why you didn't drown when the storm hit. That's why you didn't burn out when the pressure peaked. You were never alone in those dark corridors of pain. Protection was working through the discomfort. Some of the most brutal moments of your life were actually the walls that kept destruction out. Chosen one. I know there were seasons where you questioned everything, when you cried out, "Why is this happening to me?" And now, from a higher view, aren't the patterns starting to make sense? That heartbreak that nearly consumed you, it taught you discernment. That period of isolation, it prepared your voice for clarity. That pain, it stripped you of illusions and revealed your true core. Divine protection doesn't always come dressed in peace. Sometimes it arrives cloaked in fire, in absence, in endings. But it never fails to guard what is sacred. You didn't just survive, you were spared. There's a difference. Survival means you clawed your way out, but being spared means someone held the blow back before it could land. That means you've been shielded from outcomes you didn't even know were forming behind the scenes. And now that you know this, how will you walk forward? Will you carry yourself like someone who has been saved for a mission? Will you speak like someone who has been chosen to release truth? Will you live like someone who understands that death has already tried and failed? Do Timothy Keturi, Ashtonolika says, "The Lord will rescue me from every evil attack and will bring me safely to his heavenly kingdom." This has already been written over your life. And now it's time for you to walk like it. Time to stop apologizing for being alive when others didn't make it. Time to stop shrinking just to avoid the spotlight. You are still here because you are still needed. Your purpose has not expired. Your name is still being called in spiritual realms. Even now, divine strategy is unfolding. You are being moved into position, one alignment at a time, one revelation at a time. Every no that hurt you was a yes to something you haven't seen yet. Can you trust the protection even when it feels painful? Can you lean into the discomfort knowing it's holy? Exodus 14:10 says, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." And He has, over and over again. So the next time you catch yourself calling it coincidence, pause. Look deeper. That lucky escape was heaven's hand. That last-minute change was God's reroute. That closed door was a shield. You didn't just make it out, you were divinely preserved, chosen one. Let me take you back farther than your memory may stretch. Back to the moment when death first tried to reach for you and missed. You likely didn't even realize it was happening. Maybe you were too young to understand the battlefield you were born into. Perhaps you were just a baby or a child playing with toys, completely unaware that the realm of darkness had already declared war on your soul. But let me tell you a hidden truth. Before you even had the language to say you were chosen, the enemy already knew it. Your spirit was glowing with purpose from the moment it entered this realm, and that glow made you a target. You see, that first escape wasn't just a matter of avoiding physical harm, it was a spiritual assassination attempt, and you survived it. Do you remember it? Or maybe not consciously, but your soul does. Maybe it was a near miscarriage during your mother's pregnancy. Maybe it was birth trauma. Or that mysterious illness in infancy that doctors couldn't explain. Maybe you almost drowned, choked on something, had recurring night terrors, or suffered injuries that by all accounts should have had different outcomes. Back then, people might have said, "That was lucky," or "They just bounced back." But the truth is far more supernatural. Divine protection intervened. Psalm 121:7 says, "The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life." This was your reality before you even knew how to pray. The enemy wasn't attacking your body just for the sake of harm. It was trying to stop your voice before you discovered you had one, to crush your light before it began to shine. The darkness doesn't wait for you to become powerful. It acts early, trying to abort the mission in its infancy. But what it didn't count on was that heaven already sealed your timeline. Have you ever noticed how many highly impactful people report childhood attacks? Consider Frida Kahlo, who nearly died in a bus accident as a teen and afterward painted works that shook the world. Or Stephen Hawking, who developed ALS at 21, but lived far longer than expected, rewriting the laws of physics. Or Nick Vujicic, born without arms or legs, who nearly gave up on life, but now inspires millions with his faith. Bethany Hamilton lost her arm to a shark as a teen, only to return to professional surfing. Or look at Trevor Noah, born under apartheid, where his very existence was illegal. Each one of these individuals could have been taken early, and yet they remained. Why? Because their first escape was marked. Their lives were tagged by divine purpose. And so is yours, chosen one. Have you ever asked yourself why you were always a little different? Why you felt things others didn't? Why you had dreams that came true? Or noticed the energy shift when someone entered the room? Why certain spaces made your skin crawl? Or why you had imaginary friends who might not have been so imaginary after all? That wasn't random sensitivity. That was your early spiritual radar. You were a marked child, not in a negative sense, but in a heavenly one. You were born awake. And that awakening made the dark realm nervous. That sensitivity was spiritual sensitivity. That uniqueness was spiritual technology. Jeremiah 29:11 assures us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to give you hope and a future." The enemy saw those plans early. It wasn't your innocence that made you a target, it was your future power. It wasn't your personality, it was your calling. And though the attack came before you were ready to fight, God was already warring on your behalf. When the fever spiked, angels hovered. When you gasped for air, intervention arrived. When the trauma threatened to swallow you, divine hands lifted you. You weren't just lucky, you were covered. And what happened next? Something shifted in you, didn't it? That first escape didn't just let you live, it transformed your inner world. It marked the beginning of your awakening. After that incident, whatever it was, you started seeing differently. You began asking deeper questions. You started noticing patterns, sensing when something was off. That was no accident. That was Romans 8:18 manifesting. The sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed in us. You were being calibrated to carry light. That first escape triggered your transformation. Let me ask you, how many times since that moment have you felt like life was more intense for you than others? How often have you said, "Why does everything feel so heavy?" Or, "Why is this happening to me so early? So young? So hard?" It's because from that moment onward, you weren't walking an ordinary path. You were walking a sealed one, a watched one, a protected, predestined one. The weight you've felt has not been punishment, it's been preparation. You survived what others didn't, and you did it with no full understanding of how or why. Isaiah 46:4 gives this promise, "Even to your old age and grey hairs I am He. I am He who will sustain you." You were sustained before you could stand. You were rescued before you could recognize the threat. You were saved before you could spell your own name. Why? Because your name was already known in the Spirit. Your contract with earth had clauses no demon could erase. You were spiritually coded to survive. So when people look at you now and wonder how you carry so much wisdom, so much intuition, so much vision, it's because you've already walked through the fire and returned with sight. When they call you too deep or too intense, they're witnessing someone who's been through early spiritual war and lived to talk about it. You didn't just escape once. You emerged, activated. 2 Corinthians 4:8-9 tells you, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed, chosen one." That's your testimony. And your first escape, it was your introduction to the battlefield. It was the moment heaven said, "Not this one, not now." So now that you know what you survived, will you keep calling it luck? Or will you start walking like someone who's been claimed by light? Will you start owning the fact that your very survival is proof of the supernatural? Your existence disrupts darkness. Your breath is evidence of God's authority. You didn't just survive, you awakened. And from that first missed strike, nothing has been the same since. Chosen one. The second time death tried to claim you, it didn't arrive with sirens or sickness. It didn't come in the form of a crash or catastrophe. No, this time, it crept in quietly. It came wrapped in silence, hidden behind your own smile. It entered through despair, and instead of attacking your body, it went after your mind, your emotions, your desire to keep going. This was not a physical ambush. It was a spiritual assassination attempt from within. And here's what makes it even more chilling. Very few even knew you were under attack. You showed up to work. You answered texts. You laughed when expected. But behind closed doors, something inside you was slowly withering. Hope was thinning. The will to live was flickering like a candle in a windstorm. Maybe you remember that season clearly. Or maybe you've tried to forget, but deep down, your soul remembers the weight of those days when sleep didn't restore you, when your heart felt hollow, and when simply getting out of bed felt like carrying bricks. The truth is, you didn't just survive an emotional dip, you survived an attempt to silence your destiny. You endured an invisible war that could have taken everything from you. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Chosen one, that verse was written for you. Because this wasn't just exhaustion, it was existential exhaustion. A soul-level fatigue. The enemy saw that the first attack on your physical life failed. So it changed strategy. If it couldn't destroy your body, it would try to infiltrate your thoughts. If it couldn't kill you with chaos, it would try to bury you in emotional numbness and internal lies. Have you ever asked yourself, where did those thoughts come from? Why did I feel so worthless when I had so much to offer? That wasn't just you. It was a spiritual attempt to dismantle your light. The enemy tried to convince you that your life didn't matter, that you were a burden, that your presence made no difference. And for a time, you may have believed it. Many chosen ones have walked through relationships that drained their worth, loneliness that screamed louder than any crowd, or depression that cloaked their vision. But somehow, you made it through. Let's talk about others who have faced this invisible death and survived. Jim Carrey, behind his comedic brilliance, has spoken of battling deep depression. Demi Lovato has survived addiction and mental health collapse to become an advocate for healing. Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian of all time, struggled with suicidal thoughts after retirement. Selena Gomez has publicly shared her battles with anxiety and bipolar disorder. And Keanu Reeves, after experiencing the deaths of close family and friends, still carries a quiet resilience that inspires millions. These are people the world applauds. But behind their success were seasons of internal survival, just like yours. They were chosen, and like you, they were kept. Do you know how many people never return from that inner wilderness, that dark night of the soul, where meaning dissolves and every moment feels like a performance, where everything around you continues, but inside, you are barely breathing? That place claims many, but not you. You were pulled out. And here's the miracle. It wasn't because you were the strongest. It was because heaven reached in. That text from a friend, that moment a stranger smiled at you, that song that spoke what you couldn't articulate, that tiny whisper that said, "Hold on one more day." Those weren't coincidences. They were coded interventions. Romans 8:20 reminds us, the Spirit helps us in our weakness. We do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. Even when you didn't have the words, even when you didn't know how to cry out, your soul did, and heaven responded. This escape was sacred. It revealed a truth that the enemy fears. Your mind may bend, but it will not break. Your emotions may falter, but they are not your end. Your spirit, even when exhausted, still carries fire. This wasn't just survival. This was holy resistance. A quiet, defiant no to the lies that tried to overtake you. And even in your most silent pain, you were still praying. Every breath was a prayer. Every tear was a testimony. 2 Corinthians 10:4-5 speaks of the war in the mind. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. Chosen one, you broke strongholds in your sleep. You shattered lies just by continuing to live. And the enemy? It panicked. Because you weren't just surviving, you were sharpening. Every attack made you wiser. Every night you almost gave up. You gathered spiritual stamina. You became resilient in ways most will never understand. Have you ever wondered why your joy is so threatening to people? Why your peace disturbs them? It's because you weren't supposed to have it. After everything you went through, your light is an offense to darkness. The smile you wear now was forged in fire. The clarity you carry was paid for in tears. You are dangerous not because you never fell, but because you rose when no one expected you to. Isaiah 61:3 promises beauty for ashes. And you, chosen one, are proof that ashes can be transformed into glory. And here's the final truth. Your second escape made you unshakable. Because when the enemy realized it couldn't kill you, and it couldn't make you quit, it had to retreat. It knows now what you carry, and you know it too. Your mind is no longer a battlefield, it's a throne. Your emotions are no longer a weakness, they're a weapon. And your presence is no longer fragile, it is a divine frequency. John 1:5 declares, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That's your life, your legacy. You are the light that could not be snuffed out. So never downplay that chapter. Never feel embarrassed for surviving what most never speak of. You made it. You came back wiser, stronger, more sensitive to spirit. And your purpose, it didn't disappear in the pain. It amplified. So walk boldly now, because what should have killed your joy only crowned your calling. And the enemy knows it messed with the wrong one. You are not just chosen. You are proof that divine protection goes deeper than we can ever see. And your light, it's just getting started. Chosen one. This third escape wasn't subtle. It wasn't something that crept in through emotions or whispered in your mind. No, this time, danger stared you in the face. You felt it in your chest. You saw it with your own eyes. It was tangible, physical, terrifyingly real. This wasn't some symbolic brush with hardship. This was metal, blood, bone, and breath. The kind of moment that makes others shake their heads and say, "You're lucky to be alive," but you and I both know luck had nothing to do with it. It was divine intervention, swift, precise, and sovereign. When a chosen one walks into danger, heaven doesn't wait to see what will happen. It moves, instantly, invisibly, powerfully. Can you remember it? That near-fatal accident, that surgical complication, that violent encounter or medical crisis that should have ended your story. How close were you? Inches? Seconds? Did you hear the impact? Smell the air shift? Was it on the road? In a hospital? At home? Or somewhere unexpected? How many people told you, "You're a miracle"? And how many times have you thought to yourself, "How did I walk away from that?" You walked away because your timeline was protected, because your purpose had not been fulfilled, because the divine still had work scheduled for your voice, your touch, your presence on this earth. Psalm 91:10-11 reminds us, "No harm will overtake you. nor disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you, to guard you in all your ways. Chosen one. This wasn't poetic language in your life. It was literal. That hand you couldn't see, that pause in time, that unnatural calm in the middle of chaos, that was a heavenly command issued on your behalf. When death approached, it had to ask for permission, and permission was denied. Take a moment to reflect on how many public figures have walked this same thin line. Morgan Freeman survived a near-fatal car crash and returned to tell stories that inspired generations. Travis Barker, drummer for Blink-182 Orpheus, endured a fiery plane crash in 2008 that killed others on board, but he walked away. Scarred but alive, Gabrielle Union, as a teenager, was caught in a violent robbery that could have ended her life, but instead, she became an activist and powerful actress. Jeremy Renner, known for his Marvel role, survived being crushed by a snowplow. With doctors shocked, he lived. And Jane Goodall, whose early years in the African jungle involved brushes with wild predators, returned to reshape the way we understand nature. None of these were coincidences. Like you, they carry stories of divine escape. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt the slow motion effect during a moment of danger, as if time warped just long enough for you to avoid the worst? That wasn't adrenaline. That was alignment. When destiny is still unfolding, divine precision interrupts the laws of physics. Maybe you were knocked unconscious but woke up. Maybe the gun jammed. Maybe the doctor said, "We almost lost you." But here you are. The natural and spiritual collided that day, and though your body felt fear, your spirit knew you were covered. Isaías 54:17 declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." It doesn't say the weapon won't form. It doesn't say you won't feel its nearness. But it does promise it won't succeed. Your very survival is evidence of that truth. Even if you carry scars now, whether physical or emotional, those scars are not signs of defeat. They are sacred proof. They say, "I was there, and yet I'm still here." Your body may have trembled. Your bones may have ached. Your blood may have spilled, but your soul remained untouched. Because purpose overpowers pain. Think about it. How many times could it have gone differently? What if you had taken a different route, left 5 minutes earlier? What if you hadn't hesitated? The moment would have swallowed you whole, but heaven altered the sequence. That's not imagination, that's Romans 8:31 at work. If God is for us, who can be against us? Not even time itself can move without heaven's approval when a chosen one is involved. And chosen one. Here's what makes this escape so unique. It changed your spiritual posture. Something in you shifted after that. You weren't just thankful, you were different. Maybe you cried harder than expected. Maybe you went numb. Maybe you found yourself staring at the wall for hours, trying to make sense of how close it was. That's normal, because part of your soul saw what almost happened, and part of your spirit remembers what intervened. You've walked on the edge of life and returned with insight. That's why people look at you strangely now. Why strangers seem drawn to your energy. Why animals sense you before you speak. You've crossed thresholds the average person has never touched. You carry survival as a spiritual fragrance. Deuteronomy 31:6 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." That's the force that kept your heart beating when monitors dipped. That's the shield that rerouted bullets. Blades. Impact. That's why, even when it looked like your story was over, a new chapter began. And now, let's speak the uncomfortable truth. This may not be the last time death comes close, but it will never come closer than divine permission allows. You've already been shown that when heaven says, "Not yet," even destruction must stand down. That's why your testimony is a lifeline to someone else. Someone out there is on the brink. Someone feels like their next step might be their last. And your story, yes, your story is the thread that will pull them back into hope. Will you tell it? Will you dare speak the miracle? 2 Samuel 22, 20 declares. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. Chosen one. That's your identity. You've been rescued, not just because of what you've been through, but because of what you're still meant to do. This third escape was not just survival, it was confirmation. You're not walking this earth as a lucky survivor. You are a divinely protected vessel carrying kingdom-level impact. And every time danger gets too close, all of heaven adjusts the script. And now, chosen one, we reach the truth that ties everything together. The reason behind every brush with death, every delayed collapse, every close call you survived. Your purpose has always been greater than your pain. Every single escape, no matter how terrifying or mysterious, was not random. It was divinely orchestrated. Not one moment of delay was accidental. Every second was strategy. Every pause was protection. Every breath you took in defiance of destruction was a declaration from heaven that said, "This one still has work to do." Think back to the first escape. Death came early, didn't it? It tried to intercept your life before you had language for purpose, before your spirit had even awakened, whether it was illness in the womb, complication during childbirth, or the silent trauma of a troubled home. The enemy was attempting to kill the seed before it could even root. Why attack so early? Because darkness saw your potential before you saw yourself. But heaven saw more. Heaven interrupted the plan and said, "This one is marked. This one has a destiny." Not yet. Psalm 139:16 tells us, "All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." And your book, chosen one, was still being written. Then came the second escape, the internal war. This time, the battlefield was inside your own mind. Emotional collapse, spiritual fatigue, psychological warfare that nearly broke your will to live. You may have whispered into the void, "Am I even worth staying?" Maybe you begged for rest that went deeper than sleep. But even then, in that soul-deep silence, your purpose whispered louder than your pain. Something unseen wrapped itself around your spirit and pulled you back. You didn't see your own light, but the divine did. And that thread that held you, it was purpose. It was your future self calling you forward. Look at others who were brought to that edge and called back. J.K. Rowling, who contemplated suicide before Harry Potter changed her life and the world. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who battled depression before discovering the purpose that would make him a global figure of inspiration. Lady Gaga, who has spoken of PTSD and trauma that almost silenced her, but instead refined her voice into something raw and healing. Terry Crews, who overcame abuse and suicidal thoughts to become a fierce advocate for mental health and truth. These individuals, like you, heard darkness call, but they were claimed by purpose instead. And then came the third time, the closest, most physical encounter, danger you could see and feel. Something in the natural world tried to end your timeline. A near-death experience, a violent event, a freak accident, a diagnosis, You blil. You cried. You wondered if this was it, but something unseen stood between you and the final blow. Why? Because your breath still carries a message. Because your hands are still meant to heal. Because your presence is still required on this earth. And because, chosen one, your voice is part of someone else's awakening. 2 Corinthians 4:8-9 declares, "We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed." Doesn't that sound like your journey? Hit from every angle. And yet here you are. You didn't just survive 3 encounters, you walked through 3 spiritual thresholds. You've stepped across the line between life and death 3 times, and still returned bearing light. Have you ever wondered why you feel emotions so deeply? Why your intuition is stronger now? Why people come to you with their pain? Even strangers? Why certain rooms suddenly feel heavier or lighter when you walk in? It's because you're no longer ordinary. You're carrying residue from the realm between realms. You've been spiritually refined. And it shows. You have authority now, not just in your voice, but in your presence. Isaiah 3:2 promises. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. Not if, but when. Because God knew there would be moments you wouldn't just dip into danger, you'd drown if not for Him. And He kept you afloat. You passed through it, and the waters didn't take you. So now, let's bring it into focus. Let's speak the heavenly logic behind it all. You didn't survive because you were lucky. You didn't escape death because the threat wasn't real. You were spared because your assignment wasn't finished. The contract over your life had clauses. Heaven and earth agreed before your birth that you would carry this light. And in the divine realm, you said yes. You said, I'll go. I'll awaken. I'll carry this, no matter the storm. And that yes is what saved you. Some of you can feel it now, that sacred agreement in your bones, that unspoken vow that explains why you keep rising, even when you're exhausted. That explains the fire you can't extinguish. No matter how many times life tries to snuff it out, you were marked. And every delay in your death has been a stamp of divine assignment. Not denials of reality, but confirmations of your identity. Let's not forget, Elon Musk survived not one, but multiple near-death experiences. His businesses teetered on collapse. His life threatened during travels. And yet he emerged to revolutionize multiple industries, not because he was the smartest in the room, but because his assignment had ripple effects. Malala Yousafzai was shot in the head for speaking out about education, but divine intervention kept her alive to become a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Robert Downey Jr. was lost in addiction and prison, but survived and came back to redefine heroism for a generation. These are not stories of chance. They are testimonies just like yours. Romans 8:28 brings it all together, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, who are called according to His purpose. Your pain was real, but it wasn't final. Your wounds were deep, but they didn't close your book. They refined your chapters. They gave your purpose texture, and now, with every escape behind you, you carry spiritual weight. You've become a lighthouse for others, walking through storms you've already survived, chosen one. While so many people wander through life questioning, doubting, searching for proof that they are chosen, you no longer have to wonder. The confirmation is written all over your timeline. It's engraved in your memories. It echoes in the moments you almost died, but didn't. It's carved into the spaces where pain was supposed to ruin you, but only refined you. You are the evidence. You are the living answer to the question others are still asking. You've survived what should have stopped you. You've made it through what was meant to end you. That's not coincidence. That's divine selection. Let me ask you, why do you think you've been delayed so many times, but never denied? Why did you walk away from death again and again? Not just physically, but spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. Because your delays weren't punishment, they were preparation. Every time you escaped what others didn't, you were being reminded that your life isn't random. Your breath isn't wasted. Every inhale is sacred. Every moment is charged with spiritual meaning. Isaiah 49:2 He made my mouth like a sharpened sword. In the shadow of his hand, he hid me. He made me into a polished arrow and concealed me in his quiver. Chosen one. That's exactly what happened to you. You weren't discarded, you were concealed. Not abandoned, but sharpened. The pain didn't come to destroy you, it came to activate you. It made you aware in a way no peaceful season ever could. Have you noticed it? That shift that happened after each escape. You didn't just walk away with a memory, you walked away with a new vibration. A subtle but powerful change in your spirit. Something ancient and wise awakened in you. After each brush with death, your vision became clearer. Your instincts sharpened. Your emotional sensitivity expanded. Why did the same conversations that once entertained you suddenly feel hollow? Why do certain rooms feel heavier before anyone even speaks? Because you've been marked. Death didn't take you, but heaven did. It claimed you. And that claiming rewired your spiritual senses. This is what happens when the veil is torn. When you peek beyond the illusion of this world, the physical realm loses its grip, and you begin seeing with spiritual eyes. You've glimpsed eternity, and once you've seen the other side, you can't unsee it. Have you been noticing patterns, repeating numbers like 1111 or 444, sudden downloads of insight, prophetic dreams that mirror reality? These are not just anomalies, they're activations. You are no longer just walking, you are being guided. Look at those who were activated after their survival. Anita Morjani came back from a coma and cancer, having crossed over and returned with revelations about healing and the soul. Iman Gadzi, once consumed by darkness and trauma, transformed his story into purpose after surviving emotional collapse. Rick Ellen, the drummer of Def Leppard, lost his arm in a car accident and still returned to the stage. A literal symbol of unstoppable spirit. Elizabeth Smart, abducted and brutalized as a teen, became a force for justice and recovery. Bear Grylls, known for surviving the wild, broke his back in a parachute accident and yet became a symbol of resilience and fearless exploration. These are not just stories. These are spiritual assignments awakened through fire just like yours. Romans 5:3 declares, we glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character. Hope. Chosen one. Your suffering wasn't meaningless. It was manufacturing something holy inside you. Every escape etched clarity into your soul. The things that once fooled you can't touch you now. Distractions that used to amuse you now irritate your spirit. Fake people that once blended in now feel repulsive. Why? Because your frequency has changed. You've stepped into alignment with your assignment. You're not meant to fit where you once merely survived. Do you feel different now? Do you sense how your spirit walks into a room first, before your feet even cross the threshold? That's the spiritual weight you now carry. That's the residue of divine encounters. Near-death moments are spiritual coronations. They strip away illusions and crown you with awareness. After the fire, you didn't just live, you began to listen. 1 Corinthians 2:10 says, "These are the things God has revealed to us by His Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God." And now that Spirit speaks to you, in the stillness, in the nudges, in the tension before a wrong decision, you're not imagining it, you're receiving it. Divine instruction, holy downloads, a kind of knowing that can't be taught in school, only in the furnace of survival. Chosen one. Don't dismiss these gifts. Don't brush off the instinct that tells you to turn left when logic says right. Don't ignore the dream that felt too real. Don't silence the voice that tells you someone is lying when their smile looks perfect. These are your spiritual tools, and they were unlocked by your escapes. John 10:27 reminds us, "My sheep listen to my voice, I know them, and they follow me." You hear because you've been through what few have. You follow because you've stood on the edge and lived to return. You don't need a prophet to tell you that you're chosen. You are the proof. Even your courage has changed. You're not reckless. But you're no longer ruled by fear. You've felt death's breath. You've walked out of tombs others never returned from. Doesn't that make you walk differently now? Doesn't it make you speak with more authority even when you whisper? You carry a silent strength, a holy boldness, because you've met the edge and kept walking. And here's the sacred part. After every survival, the divine speaks more clearly. Your inner ear has been tuned. Your heart has been softened. Your discernment has been sharpened like a blade. You're not just living, you're listening. Every moment now feels intentional. Every person feels like an assignment. Every decision feels like a ripple in a larger plan. Because it is. Duti motivianas. Sheshe says. Fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you. Chosen one. The flame is already inside you. Don't let it go unused. Don't waste the awareness that came at such a high cost. You've been to the edge. You've been pulled back. You've been given a mantle now. Walk in it. Because these escapes didn't just save your life, they anointed it. They didn't just protect you, they positioned you. They didn't just happen to you, they happened for you. For the people you're meant to awaken, heal, teach, and protect. Chosen one. If you've ever stood in front of the mirror and whispered to yourself, "I should be further along by now," then this message was crafted specifically for your spirit. That deep ache of being behind, of always being the one who almost gets there, but never quite crosses the finish line. It's not failure. It's not evidence of laziness, missed opportunities, or wasted potential. That tension you feel, that spiritual dissonance between what you know you're called to do and where you are right now, that is the unmistakable sign that you are walking in a delayed destiny. And here's the truth heaven wants you to know, that delay is divine. Delayed destiny is not a curse, it's a safeguard. It's what happens when God holds you back just long enough to align every piece of your purpose, so that when you step forward, everything responds to you. It wasn't that you were denied your assignment, it's that your assignment was so significant, it had to be protected. Spirit didn't want your gift to be exposed before your soul had the strength to carry it. Have you ever wondered why certain doors stayed shut no matter how hard you knocked, or why your breakthrough kept hovering just out of reach? Because divine timing refused to let your future be fumbled by premature arrival. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, He has made everything beautiful in its time. Not your time, not their time, but its time, the sacred time ordained by heaven. And for the chosen ones, that timing is rarely early. It's often frustrating. It feels like isolation. But what if the delay was actually a cocoon? Let's look at the clues. One of the earliest signs of a delayed destiny is the sense of being out of place. Do you remember being a child who always felt older than your peers? While others obsessed over fitting in, you longed for something deeper, truer, more eternal. Even now, you watch people your age chase clout, money, shallow approval, and it feels hollow to you. Why? Because you were never made for surface, while others were rehearsing for the spotlight. You were being prepared in the shadows, and preparation in the shadows is always sacred. Just ask Viola Davis, who spent decades in obscurity before becoming one of the most powerful voices in Hollywood, or Le Brown, who was labeled educable, mentally retarded in school, yet rose to become a globally sought-after speaker, or Colonel Sanders, who didn't franchise Kentucky Fried Chicken until his 62nd Taraji P. Henson didn't land her breakout role until 36. Even Stan Lee didn't create the Marvel Universe until his 42nd. These are not late bloomers. These are chosen ones whose timelines were divinely delayed, so their purpose would be protected from the corruption of premature exposure. Habakkuk 2:3 Asures as. Though the vision tarries, wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Your destiny isn't late. It's being preserved. There were things you had to unlearn before your voice could be used. There were traumas that had to be healed so they wouldn't bleed into your leadership. There were soul ties that had to be broken before they poisoned your promise. Have you noticed how some cycles repeated in your life, relationships, jobs, patterns until you finally chose differently? That's not failure. That's refinement. Spirit will not let chosen ones rise with open wounds. Another sign, your growth happened in silence. While others got celebrated, your wins came in solitude. You had private breakdowns, midnight awakenings, moments of crushing doubt, all without applause. But that's how chosen ones are forged. You weren't forgotten. You were being hidden like a seed beneath soil. Luke 8:17 tells us, "For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open." You've been hidden not because you're small, but because your arrival will be loud, spiritually loud. Then came the disconnections. People walked away. Partnerships dissolved. Opportunities dried up. Did you grieve things you thought were from God, only to realize they were protection in disguise? Those weren't rejections. They were divine reroutes. Spirit severed what couldn't go with you. The delay gave heaven time to remove the counterfeit before the authentic could arrive. And now, something sacred is shifting. Can you feel it? The acceleration has begun. What used to take you years now takes you weeks. Your discernment is sharper. Your energy attracts different conversations, new rooms, deeper people. The heaviness is still there, but it's holy now. It's the weight of knowing you're moving towards something enormous. Your soul knows exactly where it belongs, even if your physical reality hasn't caught up yet. Isaiah 60:20 says, "When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen." Not hustle, not striving, not forced connection. Divine fulfillment. That's what delayed destiny looks like. Sudden acceleration after years of silence. So, have you mistaken your pause for punishment? Have you been angry at God for the slow pace, not realizing He was protecting your spiritual legacy? Have you seen others rise and wondered if you were being left behind? The truth is, The world wasn't ready for your full presence yet. It had to be softened, conditioned, realigned to receive you. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are not late. You are on a sacred countdown. And when the bell rings, your impact will not be small. You'll look back and realize that every delay was a chapter in the blueprint. Every tear was a seed in your soil. And every no was a shield around your purpose. Romans 8, 18 reminds us. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. Chosen one, your glory is approaching, and when it arrives, it won't be subtle. It will be undeniable. So walk boldly, even in waiting, because your timeline may be delayed, but it's not denied. From the moment you entered this world, chosen one, the atmosphere shifted. You didn't just show up, you disrupted the realm. There was an undeniable weight in the spirit when you arrived. Something ancient and powerful that you carried within your soul. Do you ever wonder why your life has felt like a battlefield from the beginning? It wasn't because you were forgotten or overlooked. It was because you were noticed. Heaven placed a divine mark on you before you even took your first breath. And darkness saw it too. While others were born into ease, you were born into opposition, not because you were cursed, but because you were called. From the start, your spirit whispered secrets of the future of healing, breakthrough, deliverance, and the enemy rushed to mute you before you could realize who you were. What kind of child draws this much spiritual attention? A chosen one. Before you could even form words, you were being studied. Your light made the shadows restless. You carried divine frequencies that hell recognized instantly. Can you remember moments in your childhood when you felt watched, burdened, or inexplicably anxious? That wasn't your imagination. That was spiritual warfare. While your classmates were building Lego castles, you were quietly trying to survive emotional storms. Family trauma, identity, confusion. Why? Because the enemy knew your destiny before you did, and it was terrified. Terrified of your voice, your light, your authority. Psalm 139:13-14 says, "For you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." That scripture isn't just poetic, it's prophetic. You were handcrafted with intention, and because of that, you were seen as a threat. The devil doesn't target empty vessels. He targets the ones carrying holy blueprints. And you, chosen one, are carrying a divine disruption. That's why pain showed up early. That's why abandonment tried to define you before you even had the language to describe it. Look at the life of Oprah Winfrey. She was abused and rejected as a child. Poverty and pain marked her early years. But what happened? Her voice became one of the most powerful in the world. She awakened minds and built platforms that healed multitudes. That's what chosen ones do. They rise from the ashes and carry light to nations. Does her story sound strangely familiar to you? What you went through wasn't random, it was warfare. Spiritual interference was sent to twist your identity, poison your trust, isolate your soul. And yet here you are, standing, breathing, awakening. Why do you think the enemy hit you so hard before you even had a chance to fight back? Because your anointing was active even in your silence. Because you were born with a key to unlock things others couldn't even see. Isaías 54:17 declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord." That verse was written for people like you those who've been hit with everything and still refuse to stay down? How many times did pain try to convince you to give up? How many nights did you wonder why you had to endure so much? Think of Tyler Perry, whose childhood was filled with trauma, physical abuse, and homelessness. Yet even as he slept in his car, he was writing plays that would one day break records and shift culture. He was chosen just like you, and chosen ones don't need easy paths. They need divine ones. You weren't designed for comfort. You were designed for impact. The enemy knew that if you ever healed, if you ever awakened, if you ever discovered the fire within you, everything would change. So it threw distractions, addictions, and false paths at you. But even those detours had divine purpose. Romans 8:28 reminds us. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. That means even your lowest moments were part of heaven's strategy. Think of Nelson Mandela, locked away for 27 years. The system thought prison would break him, but instead, it prepared him. And when he emerged, he didn't return with bitterness, he returned with authority. That's what chosen ones do. They don't return the same, they return transformed. So, what if your battle wasn't punishment, but preparation? What if your early trauma wasn't a sign of abandonment, but an indicator of how powerful your future would be? Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago, even before your struggle began. God had already planned your recovery and your reign." Malala Yousafzai was just a child when she was targeted by extremists for daring to believe girls should be educated. They tried to silence her with violence. But what happened instead? Her voice became louder. She became a global symbol of resistance, wisdom, and change. Her early attack was confirmation of her future impact, just like you. Let this be your revelation. The attacks on your life weren't proof of failure. They were signs of your calling. You survived for a reason. You're still here because you're dangerous to darkness. You're not just a survivor. You're a disruptor. You're here to tear down strongholds, to rewrite generational scripts, to wake people up who've been spiritually asleep. 1 Peter 2:9 proclaims, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to be set apart. The enemy attacked early not because it doubted you, but because it feared you. And that fear was well placed. Consider Justin Bieber. Fame came fast. And so did the pressure. The world watched as he wrestled with identity, failure, and addiction. But what did he do? He turned to faith. He turned to God. And now, his journey carries testimony. That's what happens when the chosen ones remember who they are. Chosen one. Now that you know why you were targeted, why darkness tried to silence you, and death came knocking more than once but couldn't take you, it's time to truly understand the weight of what comes next. Survival wasn't the finish line. It was just your entrance into divine awareness. Awakening was the spark that shifted your path. But what carries you forward now is intentional, daily, unshakable spiritual protection, not the kind that waits for crisis, but the kind that is activated with every breath you take. You can no longer afford to walk through life unaware. Why? Because your light is no longer hidden. Your frequency has risen to a level that has turned heads in the spirit realm. They've seen you. And because you've been seen, you must now live like a warrior, not paranoid, but prepared, not fearful, but fully aware. Because, chosen one, awareness is now your armor. So what does that protection look like? It doesn't mean hiding. It doesn't mean shrinking. Spiritual protection means alignement. It's about being in rhythm with what nourishes you and completely detached from what depletes you. Haven't you noticed how your body reacts around certain people? That random exhaustion, the tightness in your chest, the heaviness in some rooms. That's not your imagination. That's spiritual intelligence. That's your inner alarm system warning you. This is not your tribe. How many times have you ignored those signals, only to later say, I knew it? What if you trusted that voice the first time? Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Echat John Arba, Echat. You've been given the gift of discernment, and now it's time to treat it like the treasure it is. Honor your energy. Protect your peace like it's sacred territory, because it is. You can't casually engage with chaos anymore. Gossip, drama, low vibration conversations, they cost you too much. You've worked too hard to rise above them. You feel too much now. And no, that's not weakness. That's your divine wiring. That sensitivity isn't a flaw, it's your superpower. Your sensitivity allows you to detect what others can't. That's why it's now your shield. Think of people like Maya Angelou, who knew early in life the cost of being silent and the power of words. Her sensitivity birthed her poetic power. Or consider Princess Diana, whose compassion made her globally beloved, but also made her a target. Sensitivity didn't make them fragile, it made them transformative. Doesn't that sound like you? Do you really think you're just emotional? Or are you deeply attuned to spiritual shifts most people overlook? Who benefits when you second-guess your discernment? Chosen one. Not everyone deserves access to you. Just because someone is close in proximity doesn't mean they're aligned with your purpose. Some carry energetic residue that clouds your clarity. Others unconsciously pull from your strength because they haven't done the soul work you have. That's not arrogance. That's spiritual responsibility. It's not about thinking you're better. It's knowing you're carrying something sacred now. Sacred things require boundaries. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. You are no longer who you were before the storm. You've graduated into spiritual maturity. And with that maturity comes a daily discipline, your spiritual training ground, prayer, meditation, journaling, fasting, silence. These are no longer random tools. They're your weapons. They are how you cleanse your field, restore your frequency, and anchor yourself back into divine truth. You don't practice these things to be religious. You practice them because you understand warfare. You've felt what happens when your defenses drop. You've seen what happens when you stop praying, when you start settling, when you forget who you are. Even Jesus fasted for 40 days before launching into his public ministry, Luke 4:1-14. Even he needed solitude and spiritual preparation. Why would it be different for you? Have you noticed that when you keep a consistent spiritual routine, clarity comes quicker, peace returns faster, attacks lose their grip? That's not coincidence. That's alignment. The enemy knows your name, but so does heaven, and so does your spiritual team, chosen one. You don't walk alone. You walk covered. Put on the full armor of God, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Ephesians 6:11. Attacks will still try to return distractions, temptations, chaos out of nowhere, but you're no longer naive. You recognize the patterns now. You've been trained through every hardship. You're not spiritually asleep anymore. You've been awakened by the fire, shaped by the silence, and purified by the pressure. You've been forged into a vessel of power. Think about Nelson Mandela, who endured decades of confinement, yet emerged, not broken, but transformed. Or Malala Yousafzai, who survived a targeted attack and became a global force for education. Surviving wasn't the end for them, it was the beginning of a divine mandate. What about your survival story? What have your escapes prepared you for? Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. Psalm 34:9. And never forget, chosen one, your words are part of your protection. Speak life, speak victory, speak protection over your home, your path, your mind. The spiritual realm responds to awareness, and your words build shields. You've already seen how your thoughts shape your reality. Now, let your voice reinforce your divine authority. Have you declared your safety today? Have you spoken over your assignment? What kind of spiritual atmosphere are your words creating? Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. Proverbs 18:21. And perhaps most importantly, walk like you know who you are, because now you do. You are not random. You are not simply lucky to be alive. You are chosen. You were preserved for a reason, marked for a mission. And heaven has announced your name, and if heaven knows it, you better believe hell knows it too. So from this moment on, you do not move through life on autopilot. You move with intention. You decide where your energy flows. You choose when to speak and when to stay silent. You trust the signals your spirit sends. Because protection isn't passive anymore, it's something you activate by how you live. You've escaped death more than once. That doesn't leave you unchanged. It remakes you. You don't come out of that fire with the same eyes. You see deeper. You don't hear the world the same. You hear spiritual undercurrents. You don't just exist anymore, you witness. You've become something sacred. You are a chosen vessel, awakened, like Job, who lost everything and still proclaimed, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." Job 13:15. You've gone through the impossible and emerged faithful. You no longer measure your worth by comfort, but by clarity. You don't crave crowds anymore. You crave truth. You don't care if people understand you're quiet anymore, because your silence isn't emptiness. It's power. It's what it cost you to become this version of yourself. You, chosen one. I have likely noticed it by now. Your very presence changes the room before you ever speak. People feel something shift when you arrive. They look up, pause, become quiet, or suddenly find themselves drawn to you without understanding why. Some are curious, almost magnetized. Others, unsettled, can't seem to relax in your presence. Why is that? Have you ever asked yourself, why do I make people react this way? It's because you carry something rare, something eternal. You are marked not by status, trend, or appearance, but by the Spirit of God. You didn't ask for this mark, but it was placed on you before you were even aware of it. This mark is ancient. It whispers of divine origins. It carries frequencies not of this world, but of heaven itself. You've awakened. You no longer require the validation of the crowd, because the confirmation from heaven has already spoken louder than applause ever could. You were spared when you weren't even praying for rescue. Do you realize what that means? You were protected even when you weren't aware you were in danger. That means your life is not your own. It has divine assignment written all over it. Something in your bones carries that knowledge now, doesn't it? Something in you knows, I should not have made it this far, but I did. How do you explain that? The peace you carry in the middle of chaos, the calm strength you move with when everything is burning down, that's not survival instinct. That's spiritual knowing. That's the result of being tested and refined. Chosen ones don't break under pressure. They transform. They rise. They endure and evolve. Look at those around you. You may not always feel it, but others are watching you like a compass. Why? Because you've become a vessel. What does it mean to be a vessel? It means you were never meant to hoard the light, but to carry it. You don't just exist for your own journey, you carry wisdom, healing, and breakthrough for others. Your scars now speak louder than your words. People feel safe around you because your spirit understands suffering. You didn't read about endurance, you lived it. You didn't memorize courage, you bled it into existence. Have you realized that yet? Consider someone like Nelson Mandela. His prison sentence could have broken him, but instead, it refined his soul and shaped him into a vessel for freedom. Or look at Maya Angelou, whose pain and silence as a child gave birth to poetry that healed generations like them. You carry what others need. You may not have chosen this path, but it chose you because God trusted you with it. Remember what Isaiah 43:2 says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you." You were not promised ease, but you were promised presence. The God who marked you never abandoned you. There were moments, yes, real ones, when you nearly gave up. You questioned everything, didn't you? Why me? Why is this happening again? But the moment you stood back up, even in silence, even in tears, even when no one clapped you, became dangerous to darkness. Why? Because that's when you began walking in your assignment. You stopped just surviving and started becoming. Think of Bethany Hamilton, the surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack, but returned to the waves as a beacon of courage for millions. Or Oprah Winfrey, who rose from trauma to become one of the most spiritually impactful figures of our generation. Or Malala Yousafzai, who turned attempted assassination into a mission for global education. All of them vessels, just like you. They didn't escape death just to continue living. They escaped to bring life to others. Romans 8:28 reminds you, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Not one thing you endured was wasted. Even your tears are carrying resurrection. You might still wonder, who am I now? After all I've been through. Look in the mirror. That's not just a survivor staring back. That's a living prophecy. You've become proof that divine protection is real. You are walking evidence of God's mercy and power. You've been awakened, refined, and, yes, commissioned. But let's speak directly to the part of you that's still uncertain, the voice that whispers late at night. Did I exaggerate it? Was it all just in my head? Chosen one, you didn't imagine it. The danger was real, the escape was real, and so was the protection. Heaven didn't overlook you, it intervened for you. The timing of events that spared your life weren't coincidences, they were choreography, the quiet whisper that made you change course at the last minute, the sudden illness that kept you from going somewhere unsafe, the job rejection that led you to something greater. Those were sacred interruptions. Psalm 91:11 tells you clearly, "For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways." Divine security was dispatched on your behalf. You weren't lucky. You were covered. If you've ever found yourself alive and asking, "How did I even make it out of that?" then know this: you're not just lucky. You're chosen. If you've ever replayed close calls in your head and felt that strange calm afterward, know that it was spiritual intervention. Just like actor Jeremy Renner, who survived a snowplow accident with over 30 broken bones and called it a miracle, or Viola Davis, who escaped childhood poverty and abuse to become a powerhouse voice in film and activism. These are not accidents. These are awakenings. And yes, the confusion you sometimes feel is normal. The world taught you to explain away the supernatural, but your spirit has always known better. That's why you feel torn, because heaven is louder than logic. That's why, even when your mind says, be realistic, your soul says, this is spiritual. John 14:26 promises, but the Helper, the Holy Spirit, will teach you all things and bring to your remembrance all that I have said to you. That nudge, that instinct, that inner pull, that's not paranoia. That's protection. That's divine instruction wrapped in intuition. Chosen one. The reason you've struggled with disbelief is not because you're broken. It's because what you've lived through doesn't match the patterns of the world. But you were never meant to follow those patterns. You were born to break them. You weren't built for comfort zones. You were crafted to awaken slowly. And then, all at once, hasn't it felt that way lately? Like something inside you is unfolding, even if you can't explain why. If this message resonates even slightly with your soul, you need to hear this clearly. Nothing about your life has been random. It's all been divinely structured. Even the confusion, even the detours, they were part of your sacred design. Your doubt has been a tool of refinement, not a curse. It's kept you humble, watchful, and open to the moment when truth would finally arrive. And chosen one, that moment is now. You are not late. You are not delusional. You're not just imagining signs or connections. You are awakening. And like every chosen soul throughout time, Esther, who waited in silence before stepping into royalty, Moses, who questioned his worth at the burning bush, Harriet Tubman, who walked alone in the dark to deliver others. You've now reached the point where questioning must give way to walking. Can you feel it? That inner click of alignment. The moment the fog begins to lift. That's not coincidence. It's spiritual activation. So breathe. Be still. Let the weight of this truth anchor you. You weren't merely spared, you were set apart. You are still here because heaven is not done writing through your life. You've been protected not because you're fragile, but because you are potent. And if you're still unsure, let this ring in your heart. Even doubt can't stop destiny. Your life has always meant more than anyone told you. Why do you think the enemy fought you so hard? Why do you think so many tried to distract or discredit you? Because there is something sacred over your existence. And now, chosen one, it's time to remember what you came here to do. As Salm 138, 8 declares, the Lord will fulfill his purpose for me, your steadfast love, O Lord, endures forever. You didn't miss your moment. You didn't ruin your purpose. You weren't overlooked. What you called delay was divine calibration. Your life wasn't denied, it was delayed. And that delay wasn't a mistake. It was a strategy. Heaven's strategy. God was never scrambling. He was aligning. Let me say this again for your spirit. You were not forgotten. You were hidden, protected, cultivated, prepared in silence for a stage that only God could build. Think of Nelson Mandela, 27 years imprisoned, only to become the leader of a nation. Or Oprah Winfrey, rejected, abused, silenced, then elevated beyond anyone's imagination. Do you really think your struggle is random? There are callings so heavy, so intricate, that they must be delivered in divine timing. That's your life. That's your weight. That's your power. As Romans 8:18 promise. The sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed in us. When you weren't being punished, you were being preserved. You weren't overlooked, you were being trained. The wilderness you walked through wasn't emptiness, it was formation. It was the womb of your real identity. Every moment of silence, every prayer that felt unanswered, every door that stayed shut. Now you know why. Because not everything can be rushed. If David had rushed the throne, he wouldn't have survived it. If Jesus had rushed his ministry, it would have collapsed. And if you had rushed your calling, it might have destroyed you. Some of the doors that wouldn't open were God saying, "Not yet, beloved." Some of the people you begged to stay were protection, leaving your life. And some of the relationships that fell apart were mercy in disguise. Can you feel that shift now? That stirring in your chest? The heat in your palms? The restlessness in your spirit? That's the delay lifting. That's divine acceleration, about to catch you up. As Isaiah 60:22 says, when the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen, and He will, not slowly, not subtly, but suddenly, because when God restores what was delayed, He also redeems the time lost. What took others decades will happen for you in moments. What seemed impossible will now come with ease. The same pressure that crushed others will push you forward. The same rejection that once wounded you will be the force that fuels your mission. Look at Joseph, sold by his brothers, imprisoned for something he didn't do, forgotten by those he helped. And yet, when his moment came, it happened in one day, from the dungeon to the palace. That's the nature of delayed destiny. It doesn't crawl when it finally arrives. It roars. What if your life is on the verge of that roar? What if everything is finally about to make sense? Remember the words of Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. God's plan was never to harm you with delay, but to protect you from premature exposure. The longer the wait, the greater the weight of your calling. The deeper the pain, the stronger the impact you're destined to have. You've been prepared in the dark to shine in the light, and now that light is drawing near. So lift your head, align your heart. The time has come. The mark on your hand isn't just a symbol, it's a seal, and it's beginning to glow. Chosen one. If these words stirred something deep inside you, then you already know they weren't random. They were sent for your spirit at the exact moment you needed them. The enemy tried everything to silence you, to exhaust you, to make you doubt the very reason you were born. But look at you. You're still here, still listening, still seeking, still chosen. That alone is a miracle that shakes realms you cannot see. The fact that you're still breathing after all the invisible battles you've fought should be enough evidence that God has plans for you that hell simply can't cancel. So now, step forward, not as the one who was forgotten, but as the one heaven has preserved. This is not your ending, it's the unveiling. The world hasn't seen the full power of your purpose yet, but it's coming, and you will walk in it with fire in your bones and clarity in your soul. You were delayed, but never denied. You were hidden, but never forgotten. You were broken, but now you rise whole, and you, chosen one, will finish what you were born to do. Thank you. truly, for walking this journey alongside me, for lending your heart, your time, your spirit to these words. Whether you've been with this message from the beginning or just found it today, I'm deeply grateful you're here. If you feel led to support this mission through Super Thanks, know that your generosity makes it possible to keep pouring truth, healing, and light into more souls around the world. But whether you give or not, I see you, I honor you, I'm grateful for your presence just as it is. This mission is for you, not because of what you give, but because of who you are. And now, I release a blessing over your life. May your steps be ordered, your spirit strengthened, and your destiny accelerated. May everything that tried to break you now serve you. May every delay be redeemed by divine timing. May your name be whispered in rooms you've never entered and honored in heavens you've never seen. You are chosen, you are rising, and your story is far from over. Stay close to God. Stay true to your spirit and watch what unfolds next.